The staff at Ravenna House learned early that silence was the safest language. Mrs. Aldrin had kept that house for 19 years. She had watched 3 personal assistants resign in a single quarter, seen caterers forget how to speak when Domenico Ravenna entered a room, and once observed a city councilman, a man who negotiated contracts worth millions, actually stumble backward into a doorframe the first time. Ravenna looked at him directly. She did not blame any of them. Domenico Ravenna was not a man who raised his voice or made threats at dinner tables. He simply looked at a person, and the person understood, without being told, exactly how small they were. What Mrs. Aldrin had not seen in 19 years was the look on his face the November his wife packed 2 suitcases and did not come back. He had not broken. Men like Ravenna did not break. He had simply closed, the way certain rooms in the manor were closed off in winter, the heat turned down, curtains drawn, and he had stayed that way. The house ran on, meals were served, business was conducted. His 7-year-old daughter, Isla, stopped speaking approximately 3 weeks after her mother left, and the parade of child specialists and therapists and well-meaning school counselors came and went through the front gate without measurable effect. Isla sat. Isla watched. Isla did speak. The house stayed cold. Cora Finch arrived on a Tuesday in early March. She came through the service entrance with a canvas bag over one shoulder and a letter of engagement from the groundskeeping firm that managed the estate's outer gardens. She was 23, plainly dressed, dark hair tied back and the kind of face that people tended to look past in a crowded room. Mrs. Aldrin assigned her to the walled kitchen garden, the frost-damaged beds along the south wall, the ones no one had touched since autumn, showed her where the tools were kept, and went back inside. Cora did not ask for a tour. She did not ask to be introduced to the household. She put her bag down, found a pair of work gloves, and got on with it. It was the 3rd afternoon when Mrs. Aldrin first noticed. She was crossing the upper gallery with a stack of pressed linens, and she glanced through the arched window that looked down over the kitchen garden, and she stopped walking. Isla was there. Isla, who had not left the east sitting room voluntarily in 2 months. Sitting on the low stone border of the bed nearest the wall. She was not doing anything. She was simply sitting. And Cora Finch was kneeling 2 feet away in the turned soil, eating dead root matter from the bed, talking. Not to Isla exactly, not performing for her. Just talking, the quiet, unhurried way someone talks when they are comfortable with silence and are simply filling it companionably. Something about the frost patterns on the soil. Something about which bulbs could still be saved. Isla did not respond. But she did not leave. Mrs. Aldrin stood at the window for a long moment. Then she continued down the hall with the linens and said nothing to anyone. By the 2nd week, Isla was arriving before Cora. Mrs. Aldrin would look out in the mornings and see the child already there, seated on her stone border, waiting. When Cora came through the garden gate with her tools, Isla would watch her settle in, and Cora would say, "Good morning," as though it were the most ordinary thing. As though the silence between them were simply a preference and not a wound. And she would begin to work, and she would begin to talk, and Isla would listen. Sometimes Cora asked questions she did not wait to have answered. "What do you think this one is? Do you suppose it wants more sun?" Once, passing close, she set a small trowel in Isla's lap without comment, and Isla, after a moment, began to dig, tentatively, beside her. It was during this 2nd week that Mrs. Aldrin became aware that she was not the only one watching. She had gone to Mr. Ravenna's study to leave the afternoon correspondence, and she found him standing at the window. Not working, not on the phone. Standing, with his hands behind his back, looking down at the garden. He did not turn when she entered. She set the letters on the desk and withdrew. She did not say a word because in 19 years she had learned when a thing was not to be interrupted. He was at that window again the following afternoon, and the one after that. What he was watching, what Mrs. Aldrin had been watching, was a young woman with soil on her gloves talking quietly to a silent child about the names of weeds, patience of seeds, the fact that some things needed to fail before spring before they could come back right. Not a lesson, not a therapy exercise, just words offered into the air between 2 people, freely, with no expectation of return, and Isla was leaning in. It happened on a Thursday evening, 22nd day of March. Mrs. Aldrin had set the dinner table for two, as she always did now, Mr. Ravenna at the head, Isla across from him, the rest of the long table empty. She was bringing in the bread when she heard it. Isla said clearly, in a voice that had not been used in months, "Says the yellow ones will come up first." Along the south wall, the room went very still. Domenico Ravenna looked at his daughter across the table. Mrs. Aldrin did not move. Isla was looking at her father with an expression that was almost curious, as if she had said a normal thing, and was waiting to see if the world accepted it. He set down his fork. He looked at his daughter for a long moment with an expression Mrs. Aldrin had not seen on his face in years. Not authority, not the careful composure of a man who is never surprised. Something older than that, quieter. "Yellow ones," he said. "Daffodils," Isla said. "She knows all their names." He nodded once slowly. "I imagine she does, Mrs." Aldrin went back to the kitchen. She stood at the sink and looked out at the garden, dark now, and after a moment she realized she was smiling. She almost missed it. She had gone to lock the garden gate at 8:30, her last task of the evening, and there was a light still on in the walled garden. Cora, still there, tidying the last of the beds by the light of a small lantern hung on the gatepost, unhurried, humming something low. And Mr. Ravenna was standing at the garden entrance. Mrs. Aldrin stopped at the corner of the path and did not go closer. She could not hear what was said. She saw Cora look up, straighten slowly, push a loose strand of hair back from her face. She saw Domenico Ravenna, the man who ran a family empire, the man who made city councilmen stumble, standing with his hands at his sides, saying something quiet. She saw Cora listen. Then she saw Cora answer, and her answer made him look at the ground for a moment, then back at her, and he said something else. And this time he was not cold. He was not composed. He was simply a man speaking honestly to a woman in a garden in the dark, asking her something. Mrs. Aldrin did not need to hear the words. She turned quietly and went back inside. She told no one, there was no need. Over the weeks that followed, the house simply began to change. So gradually she would not have been able to say when it started. The curtains in the closed rooms were opened. Isla started sitting at breakfast and asking questions. Mr. Ravenna began coming down before business hours, and more than once Mrs. Aldrin found him in the kitchen garden in the early morning, standing beside Cora while Isla crouched in the soil between them, learning the names of things. She knew, because she had spent 19 years learning to read that house, that what had happened was not complicated. A man had been locked in winter for a long time. A woman had not tried to open him. She had simply sat beside his daughter in the dirt and talked, quietly, about what grows back. And he had watched until he understood what he was seeing, and then he had gone and asked her, honestly, to stay. The most feared man she had known in 19 years of service had not been softened by power or persuasion. He had been soothed by patience, by a young woman who expected nothing, offered everything, and had not once thought to be afraid of him. Mrs. Aldrin thought, on the morning of the quiet ceremony in the garden, Isla standing between them in the pale April light, holding both their hands, that this was the truest thing she had ever witnessed in that house. Not the fear, not the silence. This,